opportunity comes. The executives discussed it a little and soon forgot about Shark Beach, and Spielberg seemed to just recommend it. It's really not good, and you can recommend it to other film companies. Big companies look down on it, and second-tier film companies look down on Spielberg's face, and maybe they will give little Gilbert a chance. But there is one thing that the Universal Pictures top brass have forgotten, and that is that they have changed their boss and the president is new. Akio Tani had just been instructed to say that no matter what Spielberg's conditions were, he agreed to it first. This Shark Beach, executives also discussed. It is a good script, but they are just worried about the age of the director. Akio Tani has always believed in professional things for professional people to see, and he is a layman in the film industry, so he rarely makes decisions directly. Universal's recent decisions were made after a high-level meeting and discussion, and the majority agreed to the decision. In other words, Akio Tani is a hands-off shopkeeper who only approves money and projects and doesn't ask anything else. However, seeing that the executives were clearly not interested in the project Shark Beach, Tani felt that this was an opportunity to curry favor with Spielberg. So he spoke. Director Spielberg, I think this script is very good. Universal Pictures is willing to invest in this movie. What do you think? Oh. Spielberg raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. Mr. Tani is willing to invest in this movie? Of course. Akio Tani affirmed. Mr. Matsushita has specifically instructed me to listen to you more about movies. Since it's the project you recommend, it's definitely fine, you say, Lou? Lou Vasseur secretly scolded a damn RB dwarf, but he had to echo on his face. Indeed, in the film business, director Spielberg is unmatched. That's good. Akio Tani clapped his hands and said, let's ask that little Gilbert to prepare. We have invested in this project at Universal Pictures. The executives looked at each other, but they didn't expect the new RB president to give the project in a few words. According to Hollywood practice, this kind of thing should be discussed at the top level, and if the discussion is not passed, there is no need to set up a project. But Akio Tani is obviously not the same as the executives of Hollywood companies, and he directly gives orders according to the management model of Matsushita Electric. In Matsushita Electric, or in most RB companies, the boss gives an order and the subordinate only needs to carry it out, and there can be no objection. If Universal Pictures is still the same Universal Pictures, then the top brass can completely start the impeachment process of the president and remove Akio Tani from office. But now the parent company of Universal Pictures has become Matsushita, and during Panasonic's integration of Universal Pictures, people are swept away every day. At this juncture, none of the executives wanted to offend Akio Tani, who was sent down from the parent company. So, when Akio Tani said that he would take the script recommended by Spielberg, the top management neither opposed nor supported it. In this confusion, little Gilbert got the opportunity to direct. Spielberg himself was stunned. He just recommended it casually, originally thought that the high-level opposition would be forgotten, but he didn't expect the Japanese to be directly arbitrary. However, Spielberg was as smart as Spielberg quickly understood that the joint was nothing more than that Panasonic had just acquired Universal Pictures. Spielberg is the anchor of Universal Pictures, and he has just finalized the real big project of Jurassic Park, so he can't be scolded at this time. At this time, sell him a face, so that he can work for Universal Pictures with all his heart. In this way, little Gilbert was quite lucky, Spielberg thought. He didn't expect to be favored by Universal Pictures for the first time when he recommended it to Universal Pictures. In fact, people really didn't like it, but the president changed, and the president took a fancy to it. Now that Akio Tani has decided, even if Lou Vasseur has the heart to oppose it, it is difficult to say anything at this time. Lou Vasseur had no choice but to say to Spielberg, "You will supervise this Shark Beach, and we will invest and distribute it at Universal Pictures." Spielberg thought about it. After all, His goddaughter Little Gwen also wanted to play the female lead in the film, so he happily agreed. Okay, this is no problem. The high-level meeting ended smoothly, and what happened today is enough for the high-level leaders to discuss for a long time. Spielberg came out of the conference room, declined Akio Tani's invitation to tea, and called the assistant over. Inform little Gilbert that he can prepare and make a detailed plan for me. Okay. Assistant hastened to inform little Gilbert to go. At the time of the notification, little Gilbert was in his apartment and Gwyneth Paltrow had just finished a workout. The filming of Captain Hook ended and little Gilbert, who had nothing to do, was idle, so Gwyneth Paltrow often went on dates with him and went to play together. 18-year-old girl, just the age of fun, goes shopping, goes to the bar, then goes back to the apartment and finally sleeps. Except for what can't be done. Everything else that can be done has been done. It's also thanks to little Gilbert's physical fitness that he is not bad now, and he often exercises. Otherwise, in the process of exercising and doing yoga together, that waste can make Gwyneth Paltrow's slender legs be broken. Okay, I got it. I'll make a plan as soon as possible. Little Gilbert hung up the landline. Gwyneth Paltrow hugged little Gilbert from behind and felt his strong muscles. Honey, is there an eyebrow for the movie? Gwyneth Paltrow asked. Yes. Little Gilbert nodded. Uncle Stephen has a message from Universal Pictures that he is willing to invest in this film, and I will write a project proposal to submit it. Great, Gwyneth Paltrow said as she let go of little Gilbert and jumped up and down excitedly. I've got the heroine of my movie. Little Gilbert couldn't see it and threw his pajamas to Gwyneth Paltrow. Put it on first. My apartment is not safe. Be careful of being secretly photographed. Secretly shooting, what am I afraid of? Gwyneth Paltrow said nonchalantly. You're the future goddess of Hollywood. Will you be seen in your indecent photos? Gwyneth Paltrow pouted, but obediently put on her pajamas, so as not to lose spring. Not to mention, with the cover of pajamas, there is another temptation. Men and women who know this well know that sometimes it is more tempting to cover up than not to hide it. After putting on her pajamas, Gwyneth Paltrow ate her breath and hugged little Gilbert from behind again. My dear. Little Gilbert secretly recited a sentence of Amitabha and resisted temptation with extremely strong willpower. Don't make trouble. I'm going to work. You've been idle lately. Find a surf instructor and practice your surfing skills. With that, little Gilbert broke away from Gwyneth Paltrow, got dressed, and got to work. Gwyneth Paltrow was not disappointed when she couldn't do it again. She went to take a shower and then changed into her clothes. Seeing that little Gilbert began to work at the desk, he said, Little Gilbert, I will come back to you tomorrow. I've already contacted the surf instructor and will go to training in 2 days. When you do yoga, you call me honey, and if you don't do yoga, you call me little Gilbert, right? Okay. Little Gilbert waved his hand back. Exercise well, I won't send it, come on. Cut, you're going to come on, let's go. Gwyneth Paltrow gave a flying kiss, carried her bag, staggered out of the apartment, and drove away in her little sports car. Gilbert Jr. watched Gwyneth Paltrow leave, continued to work, and first made a project plan. Quality old Gilbert, the establishment of a movie project in Hollywood has to go through a very complicated procedure. Take Universal Pictures as an example. Generally speaking, after the script arrives at Universal Pictures, the script will be reviewed, and there will be 7 people who will cross-review the script and then vote. If the number of votes exceeds 5 votes, the script will be given to the 8th person for review, and if the 8th person passes the review, the script will be handed to the Market Research Department. The Market Research Department began to analyze the performance of similar films in the market over the past 3 years around this script. If the same type of movie performs well, then hand the script to the top management for discussion, and then enter the project approval link. However, most of the scripts have not reached this link, and they have already flown to the script library to eat ashes. The system of other Hollywood companies is different, but it is generally the same. The purpose of this is to avoid risks as much as possible and increase the possibility of making a profit for each film project. Of course, the system is not omnipotent. There are many factors that affect a movie, otherwise there would not be so many failed movies. The script of Shark Beach is a special case, and Spielberg did not hand over the script to the review team and directly took it to the high-level meeting for discussion, which is equivalent to skipping the first two steps. Doing so essentially bypasses the system and is a nonsense act. But because he's Spielberg, it makes sense to do anything. It's nothing. It can be discussed at a high-level meeting, and the script of Shark Beach has gone through a position that 99% of Hollywood scripts have never reached. Not to mention, this script is a bizarre story that was directly approved by Universal Pictures because Akio Tani, the new president of Universal Pictures, won over Spielberg. There is no impermeable wall in the world, and the commercial spies planted by other companies in Universal Pictures quickly revealed the news. However, the matter of Shark Beach is incidental, mainly to report on the project of Jurassic Park. When other film company executives were paying attention to Jurassic Park, they laughed at Shark Beach. Similar to the thinking of the global executives, most people believe that this is just a ploy by Akio Tani to win over Spielberg. However, I heard that the director who directed this film was only 21 years old, and many film company executives were still stunned for a moment. It's not that there are no young Hollywood directors, but it's true that such a young director has never seen one. After being stunned, everyone also laughed at Akio Tani, who actually let a 21-year-old young man be a director in order to please Spielberg, which was simply dizzy. Although this young man is said to be the son of old Gilbert Landrioni, old Gilbert himself is the same hanging. What other waves can his son make? In short, Universal Pictures plans to invest in Shark Beach to make a 21-year-old director a joke in Hollywood. It's not that the script of Shark Beach is not good, and Spielberg also agreed to be a producer. But the director is not reliable. What can a young man who has just left school do? The Los Angeles Times said of Hollywood, "It's a movie club of old and conservative people, lifeless, dull, and mechanical." It can be seen from this sentence that Hollywood's discrimination against young people is even greater than the aura of Spielberg's producer. Yes, if the film had been directed by Spielberg himself, Shark Beach would have immediately become one of the hottest projects in Hollywood. Of course, Spielberg is not available. He is also busy with the post-production of Captain Hook, in addition to the pre-production of Jurassic Park. While writing the project plan, Gilbert Jr. also took time to go home. Since little Gilbert graduated, the elder Gilbert threw him out and fended for himself. What is self-sustaining? The old man was afraid that little Gilbert was still at home and he would have to take care of the food. Little Gilbert went out just in time, and he fed the whole family without hunger. Although the old Gilbert is like an unscrupulous father, but when he recommends himself to join the Spielberg crew, little Gilbert will still go back to see him from time to time and eat by the way. The Landrini family has few assets, and the only thing that is worth some money may be the house in the Bel Air neighborhood of Sunset Boulevard, near the University of California, Los Angeles. Now the real estate market in the United States is not bad, and this house is worth a little money. If you want to transfer, it is not a problem to exchange hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, the elder Gilbert had long wanted to sell the house because of the lot of property taxes and property fees paid every year. But old Gilbert's sister-in-law, that is, little Gilbert's aunt, stopped this behavior. She thinks that the house can't be sold and that she has to leave something for little Gilbert to inherit. If it is sold and repaid, it is estimated that old Gilbert will suck it up again. But the old man is now repentant, and he doesn't suck much anymore, but he still has the ability, and he goes to a bar or club from time to time. Deeply influenced by the Beatles culture, The elder Gilbert believed that life needed to be happy in time and that life was more fancy. However, it seems that he was unlucky, and he didn't have any illegitimate children. Only little Gilbert was an only child. When little Gilbert arrived, a bar girl was about to leave with her high heels and a few $100s tucked between her V-shaped neckline. Seeing little Gilbert, the bar girl was stunned. This little handsome guy has never seen it. Professional habits. The bar girl threw a wink and said hello. Hi, handsome guy. Little Gilbert nodded, not intending to answer, but the bar girl didn't intend to let him go, and walked over to him and stuffed a contact information into his hand. Then he gave a look threw a wink, twisted his ass and walked away. Little Gilbert casually threw his contact information into the trash and found the old Gilbert who was sitting on a lounger by the backyard pool. Judging by the shape and taste of the fog, this is a normal cigarette. Old Gilbert looked back and saw that it was actually little Gilbert. The old man snorted and said with disgust, I didn't call you back. What are you doing when you come back? I don't care about eating. Look at what you said. I'll invite you to eat. As he spoke, little Gilbert put the fried chicken in his hand on the table. Fried chicken and your favorite donut. It's not bad. I was going to skip dinner today. Old Gilbert snuffed out the half-smoked cigarette and did not throw it away. No way. I've been poor lately, and I can't afford cigarettes. Looking at the fragrant fried chicken, old Gilbert picked it up and nibbled on it, gobbling it up. Eat slowly, no one will rob you. Little Gilbert complained. It's really, you have money and a passion for a bar girl, and you don't have money to buy something to eat. You really only let the lower half of your body be full, and your upper body doesn't eat. You know what? Old Gilbert replied while eating. I am completing the task given to me by God. What does it matter if I eat or not? Huh. Little Gilbert looked disgusted. His cheap father was simply a hungry ghost, and he would rather not have enough to eat than be passionate. The key old man has good physical fitness, and he can still work hard when he is old. Just look at the satisfied look of the bar girl who just went out. Old Gilbert asked while eating fried chicken, I heard that you got the opportunity to direct? This news spreads so quickly? Nonsense, in Hollywood. Nothing can be hidden. After the meeting in the morning, the whole of Hollywood will know about it in the afternoon. Good guys, this Universal Pictures is leaking everywhere. Little Gilbert made a joke and then said, Indeed, Uncle Stephen asked me to write a project proposal, and I am almost done. Concerned about his son's future, the elder Gilbert advised, This is a good opportunity, since Stephen is the producer. According to his character, he will definitely ask about this project. You have to seize the opportunity to learn more from him, and the task of reviving the Landrini family will be entrusted to you. Do you want to be so stressed? Little Gilbert couldn't laugh or cry, but he still nodded solemnly. Of course, I will take this opportunity. I silently added in my heart. It doesn't matter if the family is revived or not, but since we have come here, wouldn't it be a pity not to make a name for ourselves? Visiting his cheap father, Gilbert Sr., Jr. Gilbert Jr. continued to devote himself to his work. Finally, at the end of June, Gilbert Jr. handed Spielberg the project proposal for Shark Beach. In the post-production area of Captain Hook, Spielberg is flipping through the project proposal, making annotations and revisions from time to time. Little Gilbert is waiting nervously on the sidelines. The opportunity was given by Spielberg, but little Gilbert can't relax. He has to show his ability to Spielberg. After all, the project was approved by Universal Pictures, and the words that came out were like water spilled out, a mouthful of spittle and a nail. Universal Pictures will not regret it at this time, otherwise it will easily make Spielberg unhappy. Although the film project is a certainty, the director is not necessarily. Although the script of this movie is written by Gilbert Jr., the director is not necessarily Gilbert Jr. Therefore, the project proposal is also the first step to prove to Spielberg that he has the ability to direct the film. The rest depends on the performance after that. Little Gilbert did a very good job with this project plan. At least Spielberg looked very satisfied. After reading it in general, Spielberg expressed satisfaction. Well done, Little Gilbert. When are you going to shoot? How much investment is required? The timing of filming depends on the investment and preparation, and the investment is the part that the producer needs to account for. However, as a director, you must also have an understanding of the film projects you direct. If you don't know how much money your crew can spend, then how to shoot is impossible. Gilbert Jr. had already made a rough estimate, so he replied, "If all goes well, I'm going to go to Hawaii in July. With the current model, I need between $3 million and $4 million in production funding. Now Hollywood's A-grade productions generally require $40 million to $60 million, with a little more $70 million or $80 million in investment. Except for James Cameron's films, there are very few single films that break $100 million. In comparison, the $3 million to $4 million that Gilbert Jr. asked for was indeed a small investment." Spielberg said he understood. "Okay, I'll hand over this project proposal to Universal, ready to go. By the way, what is little Gwen doing now?" "She's practicing surfing," Little Gilbert replied. Meanwhile, in Santa Monica Beach, Los Angeles, Gwyneth Paltrow is doing her first outdoor surf training under the guidance of a surf instructor. Wow, it's so cool. A lap of surfing excites Gwyneth Paltrow, who is trying to surf the sea. The little girl really likes excitement, and since she practiced surfing, she has been enjoying it and plans to take little Gilbert to try it out. This time the surf, in addition to the instructor, Gwyneth Paltrow's friend Winona Ryder also came. Winona Ryder is now a star, and last year she collaborated with Johnny Depp in Edward Scissorhands, which became well known to the audience. This time, I learned that my friend practiced surfing for the heroine of a movie, so I volunteered to practice surfing with him. When Gwyneth Paltrow returned from surfing, Winona Ryder handed over a bottle of water. "Good work, Gwen." "Thank you," said Gwyneth Paltrow, unscrewing the cap of the bottle and drinking it like a cow, without the slightest regard for the image of a lady. Of course, she doesn't have a ladylike image. Winona Ryder was curious about how Gwyneth Paltrow met little Gilbert, so she asked, "Gwen, can you tell me about little Gilbert? How did you meet him?" Gwyneth Paltrow is honest. "At first I just thought he was handsome, and I thought it would be nice to have a relationship with him. Later, I learned that he was writing the script on his own, and I looked good, so I wanted to play a heroine, so I recommended the script to the Godfather." Winona Ryder frowned. "It looks like you're at a loss. After all, he got the opportunity to direct through his relationship." "Oh, that's not how the account is calculated. He has practiced yoga with me, and I don't lose anything," Gwyneth Paltrow said. "Did you do yoga with him?" Winona Ryder covered her mouth in disbelief. "If Uncle Paltrow knows about this, you're finished." Gwyneth Paltrow was dissatisfied. "I will tell you if I treat you as a good friend, and if you tell my father, I will break up with you." "Don't worry, I'm absolutely tight-lipped, but is he strong in that regard?" Winona Ryder was curious. "Of course it's strong," said Gwyneth Paltrow, with a look of reminiscence and enjoyment, and his face was rippling with spring. She patted Winona Ryder's hand and said, "I heard that you are in a relationship with Johnny Depp. Is there such a thing?" Winona Ryder nodded embarrassedly and admitted, "Yes, we're dating." "No, he's 8 years older than you, and he's married." Gwyneth Paltrow couldn't believe it. But Winona Ryder didn't care. "What's wrong with being 8 years older? He's divorced and single now, and I'm also single. I feel like we're a good fit." "He's going to hurt you," Gwyneth Paltrow said. "Hurt? No one can hurt me." Winona Ryder seems determined to talk to Johnny Depp. She also didn't let go of Gwyneth Paltrow. What about you? Don't you talk to little Gilbert? Don't be afraid that he will hurt you. We're partners, not in a relationship, and it's a very popular relationship among young people right now, discussing topics about both of us. Gwyneth Paltrow was right. This made Verona Ryder speechless. After a while, Verona Ryder complained, "Your life is really messy." What a mess. At the same time, I only had sex with one boy, and I didn't have promiscuity. Gwyneth Paltrow was even more confident. In North America in the early 90s, heavily influenced by the Beatles culture of previous eras, young people discussed issues about hemp, drugs, and relationships between men and women, which was considered a liberal attitude. In this day and age, if you don't suck some, don't go to social gatherings, party, and don't date boys and girls, you will be considered a problem. In fact, at first, little Gilbert couldn't accept this erosive lifestyle. He originally thought that he was open enough as a director of the Internet University, but he didn't expect that he was still not open enough. Until now, little Gilbert has also said that he cannot accept this lifestyle. Speaking of which, Gwyneth Paltrow is the second girl to practice yoga with him, the first being a girl from the USC football cheerleading team. Little Gilbert has forgotten how it happened, but it was the first time he experienced the enthusiasm and yoga skills of an American girl. For this reason, old Gilbert also specially opened a bottle of wine to celebrating that his son who was not in a mess had finally opened meat. Old Gilbert often told little Gilbert that he didn't look like his own son at all. Little Gilbert thought at first that the old Gilbert found out that his son had changed, but who would have thought that the old man disliked that he had too few girlfriends, and he did not have the demeanor of his youth. According to the content of the old Gilbert's bragging, at the age of little Gilbert, the old Gilbert has already found 7 or 8 girlfriends. Then little Gilbert sneered at each other, bluntly saying that the Landrini family had fallen to this point because old Gilbert couldn't control his lower body. Every time, the old man was so angry that he blew his beard and glared, but he had to admit that what little Gilbert said was the truth. According to little Gilbert's idea, career is the foundation, and if the career is done well, what kind of woman do you want? It's good to be young, but you can't eat it when you're young. Just this summer, Gilbert Jr.'s career is about to take off. Spielberg quickly handed in the project proposal for Gilbert Jr. because Akio Tani, the president of Universal Pictures, decided to invest, and in fact, there was no doubt about the project. This decent project plan can also be regarded as a psychological comfort to Universal Pictures, and I feel that little Gilbert is quite reliable. If the project plan is not good, it is estimated that Lou Vasseur, vice president of Universal Pictures, will have to consider convincing Akio Tani to change directors. The proposal was quickly approved by Universal Pictures, and Gilbert Jr. was notified to begin negotiations on a director's contract. Talking about contracts has always been done by a broker, but the fledgling Gilbert naturally does not have an agent. But that's okay. Now all of Hollywood knows that he's about to direct a movie, and although most people think it's impossible to succeed because of his youth, the potential is there. This still aroused the interest of the brokerage company to some extent, and the big brokers did not come, and the small brokers of those brokerage companies were very interested in Gilbert Jr. No, before negotiating a contract with Universal Pictures, Sheena Boone, a small agent of CAA, found Gilbert Jr.'s address out of nowhere and came straight to the door. Looking at the woman wearing a professional suit, a hip-wrapping skirt with flesh-colored stockings and black women's leather shoes, with long dark brown hair and a typical Italian style, little Gilbert was stunned. "You are." Little Gilbert remembers that he didn't ask anyone out today. The woman outside the door introduced herself. "Hello, Mr. Landrini, I'm Sheena Boone, CAA's agent." Hello." Listening to the other party's self-introduction, little Gilbert probably knew the purpose of the other party's visit. Sure enough, Sheena Boone directly explained her intentions. I learned that you are about to negotiate a directing contract with Universal Pictures, and you are also going to prepare a new film project. In the field of professional contracts, I thought it would be up to a professional to do it, so I volunteered to find it. Little Gilbert glanced inside the apartment. It was a mess, and it was clearly not a place to talk about things. So he said, "Let's go outside and talk about it. Find a cafe." Okay. The two sat down at a cafe on the side of the street, and after ordering 2 cups of coffee, Sheena Boone began her own trickery. CAA's business has grown rapidly in recent years, and you've probably heard of our president, Michael Ovitz. Indeed, he is known as the Emperor of Hollywood's entertainment agency. Little Gibberton nodded. In Hollywood's brokerage industry, not knowing Michael Ovitz is as outrageous as not knowing Spielberg when making movies. However, a big agent of that level will not pay attention to a nobody like Little Gilbert unless one day Little Gilbert can become famous in the world. Sheena Boone is just using Michael Ovitz to bluff Gilbert Jr. and add leverage to her brokerage contract. In fact, she herself is just a small broker who has just come out of the CAA mailroom, and she is as inconspicuous as many other CAA small agents. Unlike other small agents who strive to become the co-manager of some big stars and directors, Sheena Boone has her own set of theories. She believes that instead of shutting down those directors or stars who have already become famous, it is better to discover potential new stars by herself so that there is more room for development. After some selection, she noticed Little Gilbert, who had become a joke. Other CAA agents saw Gilbert Jr. as a joke, a victim of Spielberg's negotiations with Universal Pictures. But Sheena Boone doesn't see it that way. She sees this as a good opportunity, because now all of Hollywood is watching what kind of jokes the 21-year-old star director can put on a joke. But what if? What if Little Gilbert staged not a joke, but a myth of success? The stronger the wind and waves, the more expensive the fish. Although Sheena Boone hasn't watched Hurricane 30 years later, she still understands the same truth. So Sheena Boone decided to take Gilbert Jr.'s brokerage contract and decided to take a gamble. Sheena Boone explains the advantages of CAA. "We have many customers under CAA, including Tom Cruise, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, and other Hollywood A-listers. Spielberg is also in the CAA, and you must know it well." Little Gilbert waved his hand and said, "Needless to say, I know very well what CAA looks like, so let's just say what conditions CAA can prescribe, right?" Sheena Boone was prepared, took out a contract from her bag and handed it to Gilbert Jr., taking advantage of the gap between him to read the contract, and continued, "Our CAA's packaging service has been widely acclaimed, and it has been loved by many directors and star actors as soon as it was launched. If you can join CAA, then our new package service policy will take all your worries out of filmmaking. You just need to make a good movie." Hearing this, Gilbert Jr. closed the contract and returned it to Sheena Boone. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested in the package service policy. I don't think I can get along with CAA." Sheena Boone was obviously stunned. Usually other people were immediately excited when they heard the CAA, but Little Gilbert's reaction was very cold. After hearing that he introduced the packaging service policy, he actually refused. Doesn't he know what he's rejecting? It's a CAA brokerage contract. Sheena Boone hurriedly asked, "May you ask, why did you refuse the packaging service?" "This policy is very popular." Little Gilbert looked at Sheena Boone amusedly and said, "You're just starting out, aren't you? Packaging services do bring a lot of convenience to film production, but they are not conducive to studios and producers and directors controlling the crew. I'm a person with a strong desire to control, and it's enough to have a film company and a producer, but I don't want an agent to dictate my head." Spielberg, who has a relatively mild personality, can accept CAA's package service policy, but James Cameron, the tyrant on the set, doesn't buy CAA's account at all. Gilbert Jr., like James Cameron, also doesn't like to have extra people involved in the filmmaking process. The so-called package service policy actually revolves around the film production process. The agency sells the package service policy to the film company, providing the film company with everything from the director to the cinematographer, the lighting engineer, the art director, the costume makeup, and the actors. Through this policy, agencies can demand higher commissions and commissions from film companies, and similarly, they can get higher salaries for their clients through the package service policy. As soon as this policy was introduced, it was very popular with many Hollywood directors and stars because the salary was really higher because of this policy. But film companies hate this policy because the package service policy raises the cost of film production, which makes it difficult for film companies to bear. The policy of selling packaging services failed, and Sheena Boone's biggest weapon was gone. Little Gilbert continued, "Actually, if you want me to sign a contract, you just need to promise me a few conditions." "You said, as long as I can call the shots, I will definitely agree," Sheena Boone said quickly. "Number 1, I would never accept a package service, not at any time. Second, the agency is not allowed to interfere in my private life, and I am not interested in being a marionette. Thirdly, the contract period should be short, and I don't want to be tied to a brokerage company for a long time." As Little Gilbert listed them one by one, Sheena Boone's face became more and more heavy. According to Gilbert Jr.'s conditions, the agent can only be in the position of the most basic service provider, which is inconsistent with the purpose of CAA. Little Gilbert doesn't matter. Many of the conditions are just talking, and the price is just to sit on the ground and pay back. But the most basic ones, Little Gilbert should be clear. He is not a director or a star actor that CAA has worked so hard to cultivate. Paying a commission to a brokerage company simply requires the brokerage company to provide the necessary services. Now Little Gilbert really has no capital. If the other party is not satisfied, he can turn around and leave. Anyway, Little Gilbert doesn't need to compete for resources with other directors or stars. He just needs a middleman. It's nothing if you don't have it. It's a big deal to talk about it yourself. These harsh conditions are obviously not something that a fledgling small agent can call the shots, and Sheena Boone's face darkened for a while. After listening to Gilbert Jr.'s explanation, Sheena Boone also knew that there was nothing to do today, so she had to end today's negotiations. "These conditions, I will talk to the company after I go back, and if there is any news, I will contact you at any time," Sheena Boone said. Okay. Gilbert Jr. still had a good impression of the first agent who found him, so he left a contact information. "If you change your mind, come and contact me." Sheena Boone was speechless. This line should be mine. It was useless to say more, so Sheena Boone left with her bag, leaving Little Gilbert alone to enjoy 2 cups of mellow coffee. "It's just that I always feel that the tea in my hometown is not as good as the tea in my hometown," Little Gilbert thought to himself. Sheena Boone was not the only one who had the idea of giving it a go, and in the following days, agents from other companies came to contact Gilbert Jr. one after another. Without exception, they were all persuaded to quit by Gilbert Jr.'s outrageous demands. Probably out of anger and revenge, at a public party, an agent told Gilbert Jr.'s conditions as a joke. For a time, Gilbert Jr.'s conditions became a joke in the Hollywood brokerage industry, and he himself was regarded as an arrogant boy who didn't know the height of the sky. Almost everyone waited to see the Landrini's youngest son's jokes, and when he went to Universal Pictures headquarters, Little Gilbert could feel the people from Universal Pictures pointing behind his back. But Little Gilbert didn't care at all, and he was well aware that any justification would pale in the face of a result before the results were made. Only real results can hit back against those who once laughed at him. To Gilbert's surprise, Sheena Boone, who had been in contact with him, sent him an email of encouragement. The general meaning is to persuade him not to care about other people's opinions, and to make achievements in a practical way is more convincing than any language. This made Gilbert Jr. have a great affection for Sheena Boone, and with this attitude, Sheena Boone is stronger than most agents. As for the agent who told him jokes, little Gilbert also heard his name from the old man. Little Gilbert was never an atmospheric person. On the contrary, he was stingy. Now he remembers the name of the agent, and one day in the future, he will get his revenge back. By the way, kill the chicken to show the monkey, he is not so easy to mess with. Signing a director's contract with Universal Pictures was not that complicated, and Gilbert Jr. hired a lawyer to confirm that there were no legal problems with the contract, and then signed the director's contract. His director and screenwriter's salary is only $100,000, which can be said to be very low. But there is no way. The rookie director is not well known, and he is still young. At this price, Universal Pictures only gave it for Spielberg's sake. Otherwise, Gilbert Jr. may not even get paid $50,000. After the director contract was signed, Gilbert Jr. was also relieved, which meant that it was impossible for Universal Pictures to change directors again, and he finally got the opportunity to direct. The contract is finalized, and the next step is the project preparation meeting. In support of Gilbert Jr., Spielberg invited Frank Marshall, a producer at Amperin Entertainment, whom he founded, to come over. Although the director is Gilbert Jr., it is Universal Pictures producer Dahmer Blake who really has the power to decide. Knowing that little Gilbert couldn't bring the team to know by himself, so long before the director's contract was finalized, Dahmer Blake set up the crew and waited for the director to be in place. Frank Marshall didn't squeak when he was a wooden man, so the conference room was basically left with the sound of Gilbert Jr. and Dahmer Blake's discussion. We set the location in Hawaii, which is beautiful. It's a great spot for surfing, and more importantly, it's really shark-infested. Gilbert Jr. explains his reasoning. Dahmer Blake agreed and said, "I've read the script. In addition to the female number one, there are several characters in the play. What are you going to do? Go to the Screen Actors Guild, put the request in there, and they'll find the right actors, and we'll do a simple audition." Little Gilbert had a clear mind and continued, "The key to this play is the heroine, and everything else can be put away." Needless to say, the heroine has already decided on Gwyneth Paltrow. She is Spielberg's goddaughter, and without Spielberg, the film would not be established. Little Gilbert continued to gush. "In the early days, we could borrow the name of Uncle Stephen's previous Jaws. For example, this movie is the spiritual sequel to the Jaws movie. What do you think?" Dahmer Blake's eyes lit up. Indeed, after so many years, Jaws is still a classic of shark movies, and it is certainly okay to borrow Jaws for promotion. "Frank, what do you think?" Frank Marshall nodded and said, "No problem." Mr. Spielberg said the same. "That's good." Spielberg's approval means that the crew can use his name to hype the movie. In later words, it was Spielberg's popularity. The two controllers of the crew have finished talking about the general preparations, and then it is the turn of the other members of the crew. First of all, on the special effects production side, Spielberg borrowed his personal relationship and invited his friend George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic to come over to do special effects. The person in charge of ILM explained the current state of special effects production. "We plan to use the CGI production and model mode to simulate real sharks. We have just developed new rendering software, and the improvement of computer hardware can help us achieve this effect quickly." ILM's ability to be trusted, and the price is not cheap, so it's fair to say that most of the film's production money was spent on the shark. The director of photography is a newcomer, and it would be inaccurate to say that he is a newcomer. After all, he has been a deputy for several years, and this is the first time that Dur Randolph has served as a director of photography. According to the requirements, we have tried a lot of underwater photography technology in the past few days, and we have a certain amount of technical accumulation. By the time the film starts, it will definitely meet the requirements.
Dur Randolph assured.
The special effects and cinematography both said that there was no problem, and the other aspects of the film were not too problematic. The preparatory meeting for this meeting went smoothly, and little Gilbert was originally ready to pretend to be a slap in the face. As a result, after waiting for a long time, no assistant director or crew member stood up to express dissatisfaction, so that little Gilbert was ready. Come to think of it, although the outside world treats little Gilbert as a joke, but after signing the director contract, little Gilbert is a real director. Unless the producer comes to question and challenge Gilbert Jr., the rest of the crew will not open their eyes and stand up to provoke little Gilbert. Everyone is an adult, not so naive. The work content contract is written in black and white, and it's over if you do your job. As for whether little Gilbert will be a joke. Anyway, it wasn't them who were laughing. In this way, in a harmonious atmosphere, the crew of Shark Beach was successfully formed. There were no press conferences, and no reporters came to report, as was the case with other obscure Hollywood crews. It's just that Spielberg's producer is still a bit of a gimmick, and the entertainment media mentioned a little bit of it or two, and by the way, he laughed at the little Gilbert who didn't know the height of the sky and stopped paying attention. Thinking about it, the final fate of this movie is similar to those failed movies, silently filmed, silently released, and then silently hit the streets, and finally little Gilbert really became a joke. Speaking of which, little Gilbert still has to thank Spielberg, otherwise he wouldn't even be qualified to be a joke. There are so many new things in Hollywood every day. Who has time to pay attention to an unknown little director? Regardless of the disturbances from the outside world, after Universal's $3.5 million was transferred to the account of a third-party insurance company, Gilbert Jr. took the whole crew and qualified Gwyneth Paltrow to Hawaii for filming.